Hello, welcome to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast, with the Tigers still sitting pretty at the top of the ladder in excellent form after a very good win against Geelong. They're officially now our bunnies, I think it's all safe to say. After many, many years of pain and torture they've put us through, it's about time we got a few back over them. Our guest tonight is, he's almost the co-host virtually. Grockadoc, welcome to you, mate.
Thanks for having me back, Michael. It's always great fun.
Oh, I can't get rid of you. No, it's always good having you back on. Really enjoy your insights, and you seem to be a crowd favourite with lots of people listening in, which is good. And our second guest is a first-time podcaster, a long-time listener, I hope. Terra Tiger, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Michael. It's good to be on. Pleasure.
And like we usually ask all our new guests, how did you become a Tiger supporter?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Hobart in the era of the VFL, like late 70s. So, back in Hobart, everyone's a huge footy fan back in those times anyway. So, every school kid had a team and you had to have a team and you had your Carltons and these types of things. Obviously I picked Richmond. And so also my local footy team was Tigers. It's more coincidental than anything, but I latched onto Tigers at an early age and sort of ran forward. So, obviously I've seen a lot of pain, but in recent times, there's been some better times, and obviously last year was magical. So it's sort of just evolved and got passionate. And now I'm sort of 40 years on, rusted on, and all that sort of stuff. So all good.
And do you have a favourite moment from the grand final from last year?
Look, it was all great, but this is a personal one for me. I think probably when Butler snapped that goal, I sort of knew we'd had it, and I was with my brother there, and some people from the forum know my brother Grock, and I knows him personally, and I just put my arm around my brother, and it was just a really special moment for me.
Oh, very nice. And what about the Tigers of this year? Did you expect us to be going as well as we did, or did you anticipate there'd be some kind of a hangover like what the Bulldogs had?
Yeah, obviously the hangover was the worry. I was pretty confident in what I'd seen last year, and the game plan would stack up, and it did. But to be frank, it's probably stacked up better than I thought it would. And I wouldn't have been surprised if we were sort of bottom of the eight, trying to push forward. But obviously it's all gone to plan.
Yeah, it's been an amazing year. One that I think took a few of us by surprise, but in a good way. Now the game on Friday night. I must admit, I mentally prepared myself to lose this game, and if I had have submitted my tips, if I had have remembered, I would have actually tipped Geelong. But the boys played quite well, I think, over the course of 4 quarters, and we come away with a 3-point win. How did you see the game, Grock?
Yeah, it was a very, very tough game, obviously, with the rain and the slippery conditions. It made it a very contested game. Obviously, with Geelong's midfield, and the players that they have going through there, it was always going to be a tough ask in the wet weather and, the grinding game. I thought we were the better side for probably 3 quarters of that game. There was really only a 10-minute burst in the second quarter and a 10-minute burst in the last quarter where Geelong really looked like they were getting on top. So it's one of those games, the margin was 3 points, but I think the actual scoreboard flattered Geelong in the end. We just thoroughly outplayed them.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I know I said just before that I would have probably tipped Geelong, and I really would have, but at about half-time, and I don't want this to come across arrogant, it was just the way the game was going. I felt we were unlucky not to be about 6 or 7 goals ahead. With the amount of entries we had and the way we controlled the game, we just couldn't convert, which is credit to Geelong's defenders as well for weathering the storm. But yeah, I felt we had it on our terms for a lot of the first half.
Yeah, that's where I'm sort of a little bit disappointed with the overall margin, because you have a look. Yeah, we banked the 4 points, but at the same time, it really should have been a 5 or 6 goal win in the end. It was just that third quarter where we sort of blew Geelong off the park a little bit. We kicked 4 goals 5 as opposed to 2 goals 1. And if we had to kick 2 or 3 goals in that, more in that third quarter, Geelong probably wouldn't have gotten within 3 or 4 goals of us in that last. So it's one of those things where we've been most of us on the board have been saying all year that our inaccuracy is going to cost us at some point, and it very nearly did against the Cats on Friday night.
And Terra, what about yourself, mate? What did you make of the game?
Yeah, I mean, going in, like you, Michael, I was sort of a little bit hesitant, a bit worried that, we might get rolled by Geelong, just a sort of a feeling. And that feeling was real. But, once the game sort of opened up and, established itself, I thought, like we've talked about here, we had control. And like Grock said, apart from just 2 phases, we, had good control, I thought. And I was never really that worried about losing it. But obviously when, they get within 1 goal really late, anything can happen. And, if Ablett kicks that goal, we lose potentially. So when Grock, you talk about, disappointed in the margin, I was just more encouraged that we actually could, come away with the 4 points in the end.
Yeah.
And I know I've spoken about it a few weeks in a row now, but the stats on paper still suggest we shouldn't have won the game. I mean, mainly you look at the contested possession. Geelong were plus 30 in that. Now, in 99% of AFL games, if a team's plus 30 in contested possession, they would typically win it. I know we had the inside 50s, we had them covered by 22, but how are we able to sort of defy these kind of things? I know stats are only just numbers, but it just seems crazy that we keep winning these games.
Yeah, I think what I put it down to is just some star quality, if you like. When it really counted, apart from that snap that he missed it late at the start of the last quarter. Jack I thought was huge. Gets us off to a good start, 2 goals in the first quarter, and continually through the game he was always a threat. So when you've got pockets of great players and rely on Jack and Edwards and these types of things, I think that type of contribution really helped us, and it leads us to the point where I think the sort of even contribution across the board from Richmond is what really sort of put us on our way. They had a lot of stats obviously at the high end with Dangerfield and Selwood and Kelly and these guys, but we sort of had an even contribution through the whole team, and I thought that's what really did it for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Grock, what about our captain, Trent Cotchin? He had a game-high 41 pressure points, which is just absolutely off the charts. I think Jack Graham's hit 41 at some point, but that's crazy numbers. How have you seen his game?
I thought his game was absolutely immense, and it makes me laugh because there's actually a thread on the main board where it's, someone posed the question that should Trent Cotchin be dropped? And they cited his disposal count over the last 4 weeks, where I think the highest amount of disposals he's had's been 19. And that's the biggest thing with Cotchin now, the player that he is. He doesn't need the disposal numbers to actually influence the contest. His aggression at the ball, his willingness to go in hard and tackle and harass and just do the 1 percenters, that's what's keeping him, in the side. He's actually impacting a contest without needing to do it with the football in his hand. So I actually think, even though his statistical output is down, I reckon he's probably having one of his best years that he's had in his career. He's been so selfless and doing all the team things. He's really been setting an example for the younger blokes coming in. So, I think he's had a really, really good year.
Yeah,
I think that's. Oh, sorry, go on, Michael.
No, I was just saying, I was just sort of echoing the sentiments that I agree for sure.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, I was speaking about the even contribution across the field, and I think that leadership sort of fosters that type of even contribution. We see Koch doing his stuff. He doesn't have to get 35. He gets his 20, 22, whatever it might be, but, just sets the path for everyone else to follow. So I think it's really huge.
It's just those desperate ground balls that he wins. Like, he just goes into animal mode every time the ball's within 5 metres of him or someone else has the ball. Like you said, Grock, he just sets a really massive example. And I agree. I think he's having one of his best years despite his possession count. The only thing I'd like to see him have done differently on Friday night was he was running inside 50 and he decided to pass one off when he was at about 40. He should have probably maybe had the shot, maybe taken it upon himself a bit more to extend the lead a little bit. But, I mean, that's a very minor fault to pull out of his game.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bit of that, wasn't there? Because, when we do win inside 50s by 22 or whatever it was and, only beat them by a few points, then obviously there's a little bit of problem in sort of inside 50 coordination. And maybe guys not being sort of not selfish enough in some instances, I think.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, the thing with that when he decided to pass it off was if the player inside 50 hadn't have been Liam Baker, who we've been desperate to try and get him his first goal for the last, couple of weeks now, I don't think Cochin would have passed that off. I think he saw Baker and was like, this will be a chance for him to kick his first. And, I mean, we saw it in the first quarter where Cochin burst through 50 and, ran to 45 and just slotted it straight through the middle. And it's one of those things that I think Koch needs to start taking the onus on, more. He needs to start taking the responsibility of nailing the shots when we get them, because our biggest thing is sometimes we're too unselfish and it goes against us on the scoreboard, especially in close games. If you actually think that it's better than 50-50 that you're going to kick the goal, you may as well kick it. If you're not sure you can do it, that's when you should pass it off. And we've had too many players these days, running in towards goal, 30 out, and try and do the handball over the top, and it doesn't work. And it's like, just play the percentages, back yourself in. It's really not hard.
Yeah, agree. And speaking of goals, you mentioned it before, Terra, but Jack Riewoldt in very good form with another 4 goals. The player I want to highlight, though, which I think is a direct result as to why Jack's got all these goals in recent weeks, is Jacob Townsend. Now, on pure stats alone, if you just look at kicks, handballs, marks, goals, etc., as a forward, there's probably a lot of arguments out there that he doesn't deserve his spot in the team. But if you actually watch his game, and I encourage everyone to do so if you've got your doubts over him, if you watch the work he puts in off the ball to allow Jack Riewoldt to get into a position to mark, it's astronomical the amount of work he puts in.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've seen this before with Townsend sort of running all over the place, and low stats numbers, but high pressure, and obviously he makes a contest, and they know he's around. And if you can bust up a few packs and whatnot for and make space for Jack, then all the better for us. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I just thought his work rate was really good. He's such a selfless player, and that's why he is going to probably hold his spot for another few weeks to come. Now, I'm not sure if both of you guys saw this or not, but I didn't notice this until after the game. Obviously, we wouldn't have known being there. But it was brought out in the media that late in the last quarter, we're winning 85-82, and there's a stoppage inside the centre square, and the clock on Channel 7 is showing 42 seconds remaining. So the clock that they use is the official time. So there's no differential between what they show to what the scoreboard has. The ball's thrown up, and almost 10 seconds of play commences before the official clock starts to count down again. How does something like that, one, happen, and two, the consequences could have been absolutely massive. If that clearance had gone Geelong's way after we got it forward or something like that and they had scored, it's a completely different result, Grock.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I was talking about that with a few friends today, and from what I understand about it, there was actually a boundary throw-in in our forward line about a minute prior to that, and the umpire called for time off to be stopped, the clock to be stopped for the throw-in, but it actually went for another 11 or 12 seconds afterwards. So the justification for them stopping the clock for 10 or 11 seconds through the middle of the ground was them trying to make up the time that they missed when the timekeepers missed the umpire's call for time on to be stopped for that boundary throw-in. So it's one of those things. It was the length of time for the game was actually the same amount of time as it was scheduled. It was just them trying to rectify a mistake that they made, about a minute earlier. But it's one of those things, I could sort of see how, without the knowledge that it was rectifying a previous mistake with the time, that it would have been, pretty sort of gut-wrenching if we had a loss. But at the same time, if it had gone the other way and they didn't call time on and Geelong had took a mark, sort of like what Lambert did at the end of the fourth quarter, where the siren had just gone before he marked it, and Geelong almost had a shot after the siren, knowing that they'd lost 10 seconds. I'm sure they would have been filthy as well. So, I mean, I could sort of see both sides of it.
With the Lambert one, did he actually take that mark before the siren? Because I found it interesting they didn't have the shot. From the naked eye, it looked like he took it.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
From where Terra and I were, it sounded like the siren went just before he marked it.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Grock says, we were actually together at the game, which is kind of a bit weird, but we were, and I think he marked it, it looked to me just before the siren, but I was thinking, why doesn't he have the shot? And I guess, do we know for sure that the umpire wouldn't let him have a shot, or was it called non-mark, or I wasn't exactly sure what happened there.
Well, according to the rules, if he marks it and the umpire hasn't signalled that the siren's gone, he can still take his kick, because the game officially ends when the umpire recognises the siren having gone. And it was very marginal about whether he marked it before or after the siren, and I really doubt that the umpire would have been able to signal the game being over in that minuscule moment anyway. But I think the reason he didn't take the kick was it would have been a 51 metre kick from where he marked it, and Lambert's not exactly the biggest kick in the world going around, so I doubt he makes the distance.
Yeah, I was going to say, my theory on it at the game was, okay, maybe Lambo just thinks he hasn't got the leg at that distance, which he possibly didn't have, but still would have thought he would have had a go at it if allowed.
You'd think he'd take the ping. I mean, he's got nothing. He's got nothing to lose by taking the kick anyway. It's not like they can, turn the ball over and have it go back over his head for a goal. So, I mean, even if he didn't think he hasn't got even if he think he didn't have the distance, he should have just taken a ping anyway.
Yeah.
And Terra, what did you make of the matchup? Rance played on Hawkins for most of the game. How did you see those two line up?
Yeah, I think, there was a build-up to it, obviously, and, I think it was a worry with, Hawkins being in such good, goal form of recent times. I think he had 2 sevens coming in or thereabouts, and, that was, fueling a little bit of my concern. He might get hold of Rance, but, I think Rance did a brilliant job and really shut him out and wanted to get 1 goal or something like that, and he didn't really look that threatening, not relative to someone like Jack anyway. So thought it was another quality game by Rance and his support cast.
Now, I know we're a Richmond-based podcast, but obviously one of the biggest issues that happened on the weekend was on Sunday in the West Coast vs Fremantle game with Andrew Gaff striking Andrew Brayshaw. Grock, you obviously would have seen the incident, no doubt. What did you make of it?
I saw the incident, and I got to say it was very, very ordinary from Gaff. I mean, he's a player who's played over 150 games, has barely, had anything, barely given a free kick away in his career, and he goes and does something like that. And the thing for me was he didn't need to do it. He'd already created separation from Brayshaw with a little sort of bump, and Brayshaw obviously was giving him a little bit of lip about him having Brayshaw having a decent game, and I just think it sort of got underneath Gaff's skin. And I mean, the biggest thing for me is there have been a lot of people suggesting that it was a jumper punch gone wrong, and that's laughable that's laughable for 2 reasons. Because the first one is you can't jumper punch someone with a roundhouse swing, and 2, you actually need to have a fistful of their jumper in your hand to actually make it a jumper punch. And it's one of those things. Obviously, it's very, very ordinary, and Brayshaw now had surgery on his jaw. He's out for the season, and he had 4 displaced teeth. So you look at it. It's for Tom Bugg last year got 6 weeks for his hit on Callum Mills, who played the next week. Brayshaw's actually out for the rest of the season now, so it's really hard to see him getting anything less than sort of 7, in my opinion. It should be Gaff out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, agree. And Terra, what's your take on it all?
Yeah, similar, nasty incident. There's just no place, obviously, for that type of thing in the game. And when you think, there's mums and dads and particular kids watching this sort of stuff, it's just very, very bad look and shocking. We mentioned the Tom Bugg one there, and that was 6, as we mentioned, but I think this one's worse from what I saw, and just not what we want to see in the game. So his punishment will be his punishment, and I think it's going to be lengthy. Yeah,
and I know there's a lot of talk about him being a good person. It's against his character and all that, and while that may all very well be true, and based on his previous record, it probably is true, but end of the day, it is what it is. He did it. Any player who decides to take a swing at another player, whether they're trying to hit him in the stomach, chest, whatever it might be, just shouldn't do it, because anything could happen in that split second. And he's going to cost himself, potentially 6-7 weeks. But it's going to be very interesting to see how the tribunal come up with their decisions. I suppose my argument was if Hawley got 4 for his elbow, he's throwing his arm back, and then Jeremy Cameron got 5 for his elbow, and Mills got 6 for his hit, then it surely has to be 6 to 7 minimum.
What are your thoughts on the notion that he should be facing criminal charges? I mean, I know there's a big thing about it in WA with the Western Australian Police Commissioner saying that the case is actually going to be investigated by police. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it comes down to Andrew Brayshaw and his feeling on it. If he wanted to go down that path, I don't think anyone could hold it against him, because in any other workplace on the street, if that was caught on CCTV footage, the person who did it would 100% be charged with assault, no questions asked. And why should an AFL workplace be any different? I'm not sure, but I think it comes down to Andrew Brayshaw and how he feels about it, and whether he wants to press charges, I guess.
Yeah, my thoughts on that are if that happens at any other league level, they would be facing criminal charges. How many players do we see at local level get charged for assault? I mean, Ali Fahor last season got charged with assault. It's one of those things. Why should playing a professional sport at the top level in Australia make someone immune to criminal charges for a criminal act? And it's people are saying, what happens on the field stays on the field. Well, that's a grey area in itself, because where are we going to draw the line? What happens if someone does what Gaff did to Brayshaw and causes someone to have an acquired brain injury? Should that stay on the field as well? It's one of those things where it's a grey area, and people are going to have their have a differing of opinions on the incident. And it's one of those things where I personally believe that Gaff should be facing criminal charges. It's one of those things. It's an intentional act designed to hurt him. Even if he had aimed for the chest or the rib cage area, the fact that the blow was strong enough to break his jaw and displace teeth, even if he had got him in the ribs or the chest, he probably would have done, cracked a rib or something if he had have gone where, had connected where he intended to hit anyway. So I really don't see the argument that he didn't intend to hit him there anyway. Because it shouldn't matter where you hit someone. If you intentionally strike someone, particularly off the ball, it should be a criminal charge, in my opinion.
The other interesting point as well is there was an article posted in our thread, and I think on the main board thread as well, that a few years ago in 2015, I think it was, their CEO, I think he is Trevor Nisbet. So the West Coast sponsor one of the local leagues over there, and an amateur player had their jaw broken after an alleged behind the play strike, which prompted Trevor Nisbet to call for the thugs to be marched out of the game. He pretty much said that there's no place for that in the game, and that anyone caught doing that should be deregistered. So he's come out and said that a few years ago about a local comp, and without seeing that incident side by side, it's hard to tell if it's identical or not, but the outcome seems very much similar to the same. So are they going to take a tougher stance on that as well, given that someone from within their own clubs come out and said that?
Yeah, I actually posted an image on the actual Andrew Gaff thread on the umpiring board where I actually compared his comments from 2015, where he said any extreme violence should see players deregistered, and then his comments today about Andrew Gaff being, shouldn't be facing criminal charges and stuff like that. And Nisbet actually said that the two incidents were vastly different, and I look at it, how different are they really? One, they both actually swung intentional strikes to players. Two, the incident resulted in broken jaws, and three, both required surgery. So in essence, how different are they really?
Yeah, exactly. No, to me, they both fall in the same category, both intentional. I suppose he's just protecting his backyard a little bit now.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously a bit to play out of that one, so it'll definitely be a watch this space. We'll move on to the roast and toast for this week. Grok, I've given you the roast. What have you got for us?
I was actually going to cover the Trevor Nisbet thing. That was going to be my roast. So I think I'll change tact and I'll probably go. I'll roast Chris Scott for his comments after the game on Friday night. They were just completely disrespectful, saying that we needed a lot to go right for us to win. I mean, I don't really think that's the case. And Chris Scott's one of these coaches I've never heard him ever sort of give praise to the opposition. It's always, we didn't do this right, we didn't do that right, they got lucky, we didn't play the way we wanted to. It's never, they were a better side than us, they did this better than we did, things like that. He always has an excuse for why they lost, and it's never because they weren't good enough or the opposition was better than them. It's one of those things. He's one of the biggest sooks in the AFL as a coach. I mean, it's one of those things where I really cannot find a reason why he should be this way. Obviously, we need a lot for us to go right. Well, not really. We play our game and, teams fall in a heap. All we have to do is pressure. That's not things going right for us. It's, teams not being able to handle the pressure. I mean, Geelong had 96 turnovers on Friday night. That's not things going right for us. That's just us doing what we do best and what we've done, for 19 games at the MCG now. I mean, people are saying we need a lot. Him saying we need a lot for us to go right to win is ridiculous, because we didn't see this kind of logic in 2016. When we weren't winning games at the MCG and stuff like that. I just think Chris Scott needs to get the sand out of his vagina and admit when his side's been beaten by a better team.
All fair enough. Terra, you've got the toast for us tonight. What have you got?
Yeah, actually, before I get on to the toast, that stuff about Chris Scott, that really, really surprised me, to be honest. Like, as you say, Grock, he's got a bit of a history in the whinge and these types of things. I think he gets tarred a little bit with that brush from some way from his brother, but it was sort of illogical, and I think it reeked of a sort of a desperate guy, like I've got to say something now to try to do some gamesmanship to, should we go further on in the season and face the Tigers again, some sort of way to mentally get one up. But I actually think that'll backfire, and, there's been a lot of press about that it'll be the first thing played, on audio, should we play him again. So just kind of weird, I thought.
Yeah, and you have a look all week in the lead up to the game, it was, we've got a key to beat Richmond, we've got this, we're trialling this, we believe we can beat them. All week he was saying, they're going to get one up. Dangerfield was saying, they're probably the boys are itching to get up and beat us. And at the end of the day, after all the media he's done about beating us, he then goes and has a whinge because they lost. I mean, if he spent all week building his side up and they fail, and he again goes down the path of disrespecting us after what happened during the week. It's just, I don't think he really has any clue, to be honest.
Yeah, but back to the toast. And I apologise if this one's been on a podcast previous, but I want to toast our general player development. Like 4 or 5 years ago, there was constant criticism that, we don't develop players, we do this, we don't do that. But if you look at, the players that are providing our solid depth right now, we've got Lambert off the rookie list, Broad pick 67, Castagna off the rookie list, Lloyd pick 66, Nankervis trade pick 45, Short 2015 rookie list, Townsend a 4th rounder, Butler pick 67. Not to mention, Grimes came off the pre-season draft, a while back. So there's just a lot of, great depth there. And, we always talk about living and dying by the, strength of the bottom six. And, we've just got a really solid bottom end, for want of a better word. And then, Hooley, Grigg, they didn't cost us too much. So just been some really great player development. Also, recruiting's obviously involved, and I also think it's around culture and personal drive. When you look at guys like Lambert, and I think that's just really infectious to get everything out of him. He's had some knockbacks, obviously, but that sort of stuff. It's under the title of player development, but I just think there's culture too. It's just been really just really, really, really strong. And, by contrast, we all know that, Cochin, Martin, Rance, Rewalt, these guys, first-round draft picks, they're, always going to be great players. But when you look at where some of these guys have come from, it's just been staggering in terms of, their output, and just wanted to toast that.
Yeah, that's a fair call, and it really puts a lot of it into perspective, doesn't it, with how far everyone's come as a club. It wasn't that long ago where we couldn't develop players to save ourselves, so whatever they've changed, they've gotten it right, and it's paying dividends now, so that's a really good call. I've got a couple of quick...
Of course you got players like Jack Graham, who's developed. I mean, Callum Moore was a rookie, and he's showing signs at AFL level. It's just one of those things where I think our recruitment and player development over the past 3 or 4 years has probably been close to, if not the best in the AFL.
Yeah, definitely agree. I've got a couple of quick ones as well. I just want to quickly roast Carlton for still letting GWS score at a reasonable rate despite having two extra players on the ground due to the Giants' injuries. I knew in my heart of hearts that I should have been turning that game off because it was diabolical, but I couldn't not watch what was unfolding with the Giants literally playing keepings off for different parts of the game with 16 blokes in the field. That's just beyond embarrassing. And I want to do a quick toast because I have a funny feeling, and it hasn't been officially confirmed yet or not, but I think the Fable Singer song is now back at the MCG. I think it's the old version with the dubbed lyrics.
Yeah, it certainly sounded like that at the game. It sounded like it was going back to the sort of the original style with just the that one little bit sort of edited in. So I think it's so much better than that garbage re-recorded version, in my opinion.
And they've definitely changed on the membership phone number because I was on hold today waiting to make a payment, and it's definitely the original version back on there. So the power of the people. Very good work, everyone. But it definitely sounds a lot better.
Yeah.
All right, before we get stuck into the game, there's a couple of questions come through from listeners via Twitter. The first one was from Dan Ryan. And this one is, and I told him this, it's an evil question because it's like asking us to pick our favourite child. We might have to work through this together. When Graham, Prestia, Broad, Butler, Hawley, and even to an extent Conker are all ready to come back in, who makes way for them?
Yeah, it's like you say, who does make way? I mean, I think there's some obvious ones that have come in recently, and Menadue, Liam Baker, I think they're the easier ones, but I still rate Connor, by the way, but that's another argument. But then it just gets way, way tougher. You could say Townsend, but we just sung up his praise 10 minutes back, and if you rule out Townsend, then who else? It gets pretty tricky, and maybe some of these guys don't come back. I mean, Sam Lloyd's obviously a candidate as well too, but did some good things as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Obviously, Menadue and Baker will be out for Butler and Prestia. I think they're the two that come straight out. Sam Lloyd will probably come out as well, maybe for Jack Graham. And obviously, it's those ones that are borderline. Obviously, Brandon Ellis and Camden McIntosh have found themselves in the VFL for periods over the course of this year. So it's one of those things where you can make a case. I think two are probably the easiest ones to take out with Baker and Menadue. But then you could probably make a case for 2 or 3 others to come out as well. But it's one of those things. I really don't envy the match committee at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if it was sort of 6 weeks back, so I'd be probably probably thinking maybe Higgins could make way, but he's obviously done some good things, and his development for a first year player has just been staggering. And if I throw something really controversial in there, see what you think. I'm thinking out loud here, but any case for Rioli to be rested or one to replace him, I kind of doubt that you guys will agree, but I just wanted to throw it out there and see if you thought there was any case at all.
From me. Offensively, He's probably dropped a little bit in the last few weeks, but I still think that he's the cornerstone of our defensive pressure, especially in the front half. He just seems to make everyone else stand a bit taller and work a bit harder. It's like he holds them to account with his work rate, if that makes sense. But I would like to see him use his offensive flair a bit more as well, but that could be under direction from the coaching staff, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So who does? You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
really
well,
tricky.
the other one that I was going to throw out as well, which I've seen Sturge mention it as well on the board. I'm not 100% sure Hawley can come back into the team as easily as what some might think. I think we've found some pretty good balance down back, and Jaden Short's playing that role exceptionally well. And when Hawley was in, I just felt we slowed down a bit down back, and it didn't seem as well balanced. So I'm not too sure if he'll slot back in straight away.
Yeah, I don't think he will either, only for the simple fact when Broad comes back into the side, because Broad will play. He's one of those players that's pretty integral for our backline with, his ability to sort of shut down players. That releases Nick Vlauston to play more as a rebounder. He's been playing a lot more as that sort of medium intercept marking player, and it hasn't really offered us much in the way of sort of offensive capabilities. And I think that will change once Broad comes back. So I really don't see the need for Hawley to come right back in. But in regards to the question that Terra asked about Rioli, I'm in the no camp as well. He's our number one pressure forward in terms of total pressure acts and everything, and he's the cornerstone of our forward structure. So yeah, I can't see him getting dropped, because it's no coincidence our forward lines looked much more creative, and our pressure game up forward's gotten much better since he's returned from injury. So yeah, I really can't see him being dropped.
Yeah, for the record, I'm not sort of suggesting it either. I'm just sort of, cherry picking names out and sort of running with it. And also, last year's Rioli, was it against GWS in that final? He just absolutely magical, and I think we need him in the finals. But I think there'll be questions, and if these guys are going to come in, who comes out? That's the $64,000 question. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, the second question from Twitter was from Tiger Willie 85. Do we think that Bolton will stick around, or will he look elsewhere? And the same with Callum Moore.
Yeah. With Bolton, obviously he put the contract talks on hold to the end of the year, and don't know how he'd be feeling about that now. Don't know how his management will be feeling about that now. We've obviously got a wealth of small forwards as we've spoken about, and we've still got Stengel and Liam Baker now, emerging as well. So, there's competition for him. I think he's got tricks. There's no doubt, and I've seen this at VFL level, a little bit at AFL level, mainly in VFL level. There's lots and lots of tricks, but I think there's got to be some question mark on, what would you call it? Just his work ethic and these types of things. So, they're always been the question mark, and I still think they're the question mark, and I think that might count against him. And, if I had to guess, I would say he'd probably looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll probably be looking elsewhere. I mean, the position that he plays isn't exactly one that, we're in desperate need of. As you said, with Jack Higgins and Liam Baker coming in this year, and we've got Castagna, Butler, Rioli, and Stengel waiting in the wings as well. It's one of these things where Bolton really needs to play a blinder to even really get a look in, and his work ethic and commitment to the side, and his consistency, not just through games but quarter to quarter, is a huge reason why he hasn't really been able to crack into the senior side. And it's one of those things where he does have talent, and his trade value at the moment will probably be about roughly where we took him in the draft anyway. So it's not like he's gotten, his trade value's declined and really plummeted, because the only reason he hasn't really been getting games is because the position that he plays, it's one that we're completely stocked with. So I could sort of see him going back home to WA, obviously somewhere like Freo, because West Coast probably don't need him with Liam Ryan and all that coming through. But there have been reports that Adelaide are chasing him hard as well, as they see him as a potential replacement for Eddie Betts in the next couple of years anyway. But yeah, I really do think that he's on the way out. I mean, he gambled like Dusty did, putting his contract off until the end of the year, hoping he's going to have a decent year at AFL level, kind of like what Short did, and it backfired on him, and now I really can't see a way back from him from here.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be gone as well. With Callum Moore, we're going to have a bit more on this tomorrow night with Tiger 71, but from all reports, it does sound like that early on in the year he wasn't happy with his position within the team. He wanted to get some more game time, but now he's obviously was playing a few more games. But there's reportedly some offers that have been thrown around from North Melbourne. So I think with him it's as simple as if we get Lynch, he probably goes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Callum Moore's one that I would really like to stick around. I've been a massive rap for him over the past couple of years. He's got all the tools to be a solid player at AFL. He sort of reminds me right now of a young Jack Revolt. You know, he's got that wiry frame, but he's a good contested mark. He's athletic. He runs and chases and tackles and pressures. He does all the little things really well. It's just at the moment his kicking's letting him down, and I would really like him to stick around. But he's shown enough to be shown enough for us at AFL level where his trade value is probably going to be fairly high, especially to clubs if we do get Tom Lynch, who need a key forward. And if we can get anything in the realm of, say, a second rounder for Callum Moore, you'd really have a look at it.
Yeah, exactly. I think with the Lynch thing, obviously if Lynch comes, he's, third banana, and, it's difficult to see how he'd break into the side, when, got a pecking order like that. So, just even maybe for himself, I'd be happy if he went somewhere else and did well, because I don't really see him getting a look in if Lynch comes and he stays fit.
Yeah, you can never begrudge someone wanting to get more game time. That's completely fair enough. But yeah, I think there's a few things that have to fall into place for that to occur, but we'll see how that goes. Thank you for everyone sending through those questions as well. Really appreciate it. We'll move on to the preview of the round 21 game versus Gold Coast, who are 17th on the ladder. I know it's first versus 17th, but for us it's actually an important game because we need one more win to secure a top 2 finish. So as it stands now, we can still get jumped by GWS and West Coast. So probably the perfect time to get that extra win. It could be our first win interstate, but I'd like to back the boys in to do it. Grok, what are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those games where I'm expecting a comfortable win. Obviously, Gold Coast are one of these sides who hasn't had a great 2018, but they have been competitive in some games and have even, caused a few upsets. They knocked off Sydney just a few weeks ago. So they are a dangerous side now, and especially when they've got nothing to play for and they're playing for pride. I mean, obviously, with it coming out that managers are telling their draftees, that they don't want to go to Gold Coast. Obviously, that's going to sting the Suns a little bit. So they'll be, trying to show potential draftees that Gold Coast is on the up. So it's one of those things where I expect the Gold Coast to come out firing, but at the same time, while it's a game that we need to win in terms of top 2 and locking it away, I could see us taking the opportunity just to play a few of the youngsters to give them a rest. I mean, obviously, Nankervis is integral to us, and he's been carrying a mountain of work. So I could see this being a game where we do bring in Soldo to sort of play and cover and give Nank just a bit of a freshen up before finals. Obviously, Noah Bolt has been in some ripping form in VFL level, so I wouldn't be surprised if the club decides to reward his form as well with the game. It's just one of those things where while I'm expecting a solid win, it also depends on how the club sees it. If they see it as an opportunity just to sort of freshen up a few of the blokes, because we do have Essendon and the Western Bulldogs who are much tougher opponents in the last 2 weeks, and Gold Coast. They're, I won't say easy beats, but they're not exactly, world beaters as well. So it's one of those ones where I do see us maybe taking advantage and giving blokes like Nank and maybe Rioli this week, just give him another week to freshen up as well. But yeah, I really do expect us to get over the top of them quite comfortably.
Well, as I would have been completely on the same page as you with the resting players up until about 20 minutes ago when I got the email from the footy club that come through with Neil Baum coming out and saying that we're not resters, we're players. I don't think we've ever thought that much about resting blokes. We'd much rather play them than rest them. I think the players would rather play than not. And then he specifically mentioned Toby Nankervis and said that he don't think he'd be happy if we left him out. So it sounds like from all reports we're going full strength and not changing a thing. And the heading reads that Tigers could recall 4 flag stars for the Suns. So I don't think much is going to change in the way of our lineup, which is, if that's what the club thinks is going to be what works best, then we'll obviously back him in. Terra, what about your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think similar to what Grok and you've added, Michael's like, I just wonder about that resting. Like, I wonder if the players can be managed through their time on ground a little bit. Like,
they've been doing that with Curvis.
Yeah, like I think if that can continue, like I totally get the let's keep this continuous, I need to play sort of thing. We've heard that from players before, so if that can be managed a bit more or continue to be managed by time on ground, I think that's a good thing to do. But like I was sort of thinking, maybe Soldo does come in or whatever, give him a chop out. But I think they have to ask Nank himself. I think he'd know best. In terms of the game, you'd hope for a pretty easy win. I would see, if I look through the Gold Coast Suns side and I have a look at it, they've had some pretty bad run of injury themselves. Now Peter Wright going down, first couple of minutes. On the weekend's game, they've already, obviously the Lynch is out and Andrew Swallow, Jack Martin, Sam Day, these guys, there's a lot of depth there, and they didn't have that much to start with. So, when those keys go out, it doesn't leave that much in terms of, star quality and that sort of stuff. So I would expect if, we apply ourselves, and we should do, to try to lock in the top 2, then, we should come out an easy win, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think the only player they're getting back of note is Stephen May. I think he's back from suspension this week. But like I watched a bit of their game on last weekend against Melbourne, I think it was, and then even just looking at their lineup on paper, it's their forward line that really worries me on their behalf. That there just doesn't seem to be any firepower in there. And I think our back line's going to pick them apart pretty easily, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some sort of, known quantities in there, Highbrow and Pierce Hanley and Riscatelli, but, like you say, I think we've just got too many weapons there and, too much scoring power, too much defensive power as well. So, look, I don't want to get cocky because we've seen what happens when that, when you do that, but, look, I would see an easy win for Tigers.
Yeah, a bit like Grok said as well at the start. I expect Gold Coast to come out firing as well because they do have a bit to prove. They're not going to be happy about their performance last week. And playing at home in front of their home crowd is always going to fire them up a little bit. So it might be a heated contest for the first 10-20 minutes, but I don't think they're going to be able to sustain it and go with us for the duration of the game. Was there any other key matchups you were looking at, Grok? Or?
And there's also one thing to make note of too. I mean, you can't play down the Tom Lynch factor as well. I mean, obviously it's come out that we are the front runners for Tom Lynch, and the Gold Coast players will know that. So I think there might be, a bit of extra motivation for them to come out and actually put in a decent performance against us, sort of as a little bit of a one-finger salute to Tom Lynch, and him departing. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting game in that regard. I could see the Gold Coast Suns maybe becoming a little bit more physical with us than what they'd otherwise would be, as well as, just sort of sending a bit of a message to Tom Lynch that they don't accept it. In terms of other matchups, obviously the midfield battle's going to be a good one. Gold Coast midfield's reasonably strong. Their backline, obviously, Rory Thompson's been in some really, really good form. He's a solid defender. Stephen May coming back will be solid. Their forward line is probably the weakest line that they have, and we all know our back line's probably our strongest. So I really can't see Gold Coast breaking our back line too often to score. So, yeah, I just think in terms of overall matchups, we've probably got the better quality pretty much on every line all over the park.
Yep, no, I agree with all that. All right, before we let you both go, we'll get a final prediction, including margin. Terra, I'll start with you.
Yeah, probably have to back it up now. Look, I think 6 to 10 goals. So let me pick, 45 points, Tigers.
No worries, Grok.
Richmond by 61. I think it'd be a very, very comfortable win.
I reckon the Tigers by about 45. So hopefully that keeps Makeshift happy. He's always honest about our predictions. Just a reminder, the game is on. When is it on? Saturday night, isn't it? Saturday during the afternoon at 2:10 p.m. at Metricon Stadium. Hopefully everyone who's going over there has safe travels and enjoys the sunshine, unlike the crap we have down here. So, Grockadoc, Terra Tiger, thanks so much, guys, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Until next time, go Tigers, and make sure you tune in tomorrow night for the Trade Talk special with Tiger 71 for all your Tom Lynch updates, which should be fascinating. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube so you can follow all the roast and toast, the reviews and previews, and all topics Richmond. Also keep an ear out for our special episodes of interviews with past players. Go Tigers.